Okay, we are live. Hi, this is William Ramsey. Welcome to William Ramsey Investigates. On today's show, I have a very special guest, a returning guest. His name is Dr. Hans Utter. Last name is spelled Utter. And this will be eighth part in our series about MKUltra music as the weapon, from Manson to the technotronic control state. And he's definitely one of my most listened to guests. Like, people consistently send me like very good compliments about him and his research, really original research. I haven't seen anything like it anywhere else, but really going back to the 60s and the 50s, and some of the names that may not be as shared these days, like VIII or some of these other guys behind the scenes at the Grateful Dead. So I'm always interested in listening to him. So welcome back to the show, Hans Utter.
All right. That's my gym teacher when I was in 8th or 9th grade called me Hans Utter. No, that was like traumatic, right? It was a difficult time, Hans Utter. But William, it's great to be back here. And all, joking aside. Yeah. So I thought, I thought actually, if you don't mind, we'll start out. This is just a song we recorded. I recorded it at home a couple days ago. It's not me singing, and this is Ganesh. It's this Ganesh remover of obstacles. It's a using the sound, the resonant tones in this particular name of the elephant-headed deity Ganesh. So if you could maybe just play just a bit of that before we dive into the darkness.
Okay, let's do it. All right, let me get this to play. Hold on. All right, you ready?
Yep, do it. Well, I'm not hearing the sound on my end, but that's okay. As long as other people hear it.
Is that coming through now?
I don't need to hear it as long as the audience can hear it. You know what I mean? If it's being broadcast, I've heard it more times. But anyway, so we can. So that's just that's okay. Just play a little bit more. Go ahead.
Okay.
Okay, that's enough. You can stop there. All right, so that's just something on a more positive musical tip. I saw that Good Morning from Sydney, and there's that little clip. So, yeah, I threw that together in about an hour. But
yeah, I'll have to edit that in for people who didn't get the music. It's hard for me to bounce in between StreamYard and some of the players. It just doesn't work out sometimes. So.
Well, no worries. It's the nature of the reality of the system, the particular things that are unfolding right now require a level of discernment in terms of, what you let into your mind, how you relate to what comes in your mind, and how I think ultimately you clarify yourself and clarify your life and what you're doing, because as we go through today's show, we'll see that when, Jerry's talking about the plug in the brain, right? Or whatever, it's 6G, right? That is the same model, the same template, which is really the ending of humanity as we know it, right? It's a extraction, so to speak, of the human potential, human energy, which doesn't really make sense for anybody except for people that are pretty malevolent, uh, which it appears these people potentially are. If we can go through all the headlines, but a lot of this, we can go back. We talked about the Macy conferences, and this connects with before World War II. We have the Prince of Radio Project. We have the first Macy conference before it was called that officially was about cerebral inhibition, right? And so that is this idea that is actually hypnosis, but it's a much more clear exposition of hypnosis. And a lot of these ideas and goals and outcomes are linked to the United Nations. They're connected with this idea of the global governance, right? And also with the voluntary shifting of your energy into that system, right? So whether if we look at there's a Marilyn Ferguson, I don't have the book in front of me, but the Aquarian Conspiracy,
Yeah.
she talks about that with the purpose of disseminating, distributing LSD was that, to open people up to the spiritual. But she says, she makes the admission that what they think they're encountering, this higher dimension, they're actually being possessed. So it's opening to a type of possession, right?
Wow.
And that is kind of, what, to a degree, what is occurring, right? But it all ties in, and it all creates this sort of very ugly mosaic. And she's like, an insider. So which I wasn't going to go into this whole other side, but we can look at the, going back to the 1920s, going back before that, going back to this other trend of this idea of the sort of alchemizing of humanity, but also the clockwork mechanism of society running like a giant clock, right?
Yeah.
So that's in the interest of those who are at the higher echelons of that. And so, again, what's interesting about some of these clips, that we'll play is like Paul Foster, who's a merry prankster, but also a cartoonist and then a genius mathematician and computer programmer who was a merry prankster. And he's talking about, so we can maybe play a clip from him, directly from the horse's mouth, so to speak, talking about this programming. That's, this is like in the movie Performance, right? Mick Jagger clearly states, this is a type of programming, right? I am, there's a guy, they drug him and he goes into this like kind of weird mind control sequence. And during that sequence, the guy asked him, or Mick Jagger says, what do you want to hear? And he says, you're the programmer. Wow. You program me. Right. And that's exactly what, to a certain extent, that's the decision of the will, right? We have our will. We have our sense of ourselves. There's a big portion of types of spirituality, new age stuff, whatever, that really works to sort of destroy this individual being, right? That is us, right? Not that obviously a lot of people are almost, barbarians, crazed barbarians, or else just locked into, neurotic patterns or whatever they may be, or addictions, etc. But your way out of that is your essence, not dissolving that essence, right? And we see this in a lot of these secret societies, the OTO, the Stella Martona, going back to the Hashishans, the assassins, the Ismaili thing, is that you, in a certain way, you give up this responsibility, just as in the Aquarian conspiracy. This is in a sense opening the Luciferian age. So you have a choice, though, right? And that's why, even though I mentioned the United Nations, the reason I brought this up is they have this, thing they're offering, right, to take total control of all the governments of the world for this vaccination stuff, right? To suppress all disinformation. This is a complete planetary control with no more national sovereignty. And this, was voted upon. It was passed. I think there's 11 or 12 countries that didn't vote, but this is the exact same process, just another vehicle direction. So yeah, if you want to go ahead and play the Paul Foster thing.
Okay, let me pull this out. Let's see if I can get this to play. All right. Audio. Mac. Let me know if you can hear this.
Also got interested in this girl, V, right, who was a friend of a cousin of a guy who worked with me. I'm a programmer now. Yeah. I'm a computer programmer. Don't you do it now? This is the beginning of 64, let's say. What are you doing right now? I'm working as a common laborer.
Right, so he says right there, I'm the programmer, right?
Yes, yeah, and that's Paul Foster, another one of these mysterious merry pranksters, right? And remember, I mentioned that all this high-tech stuff was happening. And so we have another one of the players involved with the technical expertise and know-how, right, to be doing this experimentation. So yeah, go ahead and continue.
And you have 8 audio files, right? So we just went through one. But it is interesting, the kind of merry prankster theme kind of overlaps with the Joker archetype, right? Like they're playing a trick on people and having a good time at it. It's kind of interesting.
Well, the jester also, right, is connected with Baal, right?
Oh,
so the image of the jester and Baal and this light and dark. So the even like Loki, right, the trickster god, right? So you're a prankster, but it is there is this connection, which at least I've seen that, encountered that, it kind of makes sense, right? But if you tie that in with Baal and this, then you go all the way back. This becomes, it's not simply just something that is now being undertaken because of the technology is there or because this and that. No, these particular types of things and this, the whether it's the Chaldeans or the worship of Isis and these other, where they have a human sacrifice, right? You have to sacrifice your firstborn son to Moloch, right? But this is the priests, right? They were the controllers of many. There's many examples of this where people couldn't read, even they couldn't read Sanskrit, or they didn't know the verses, or they weren't able to do the rituals, right? So the priests maintain a great deal of power, and it's this this strand or stream that connects. So that'd be interesting if like I said, I saw a reference to that and I'll have to confirm it, but it would be interesting to tie that in with Baal. Then you have the merry pranksters, then you have the Joker, right? That's another iteration of this. And just as an aside, to state that I think the last show we did, I talked about these types of neurophysiological configurations that are almost wired in, right, through types of trauma, stuff like that. Well, things don't have to go to that extent, right? Just the associational references of, say, for example, background in a scene in a movie, and the music, right? So you associate a character who is diabolical, right, who is essentially evil, with the musical theme of the hero, right? Or you destabilize. So, you have this inversion of morality, so to speak. And that's an example of the Joker. Like you say, Wolf of Wall Street. That's another great example, right? That guy was, he was really a very, so he's a total sociopath, psychopath. But there's many other examples of this, right? And in fact, it can be very subtle, but by playing certain melodic sequences, certain types of chord progressions in particular keys, you can imprint emotional responses or valencing how you perceive something, right? So this is and so it all anyways, we'll just continue with the examples.
Just one more thing, like the
There you go.
prankster trickster motif in folklore covers almost all cultures. So like this is one aspect in the Grateful Dead of that thing. I mean, I can just show you here. This is just
please.
Or show the audience as well. But this is just the Wikipedia thing on the trickster motif. The trickster is a character in the story who exhibits a great degree of intellect or secret knowledge and uses it to play tricks or otherwise disobey normal rules and defy conventional behavior, right? That's the merry pranksters. And then you can go down and all these Native American coyotes, but you can just see all of the tricksters in all of these different Igbo, right? That's South Africa or sub-Saharan Africa. American folklore, Belgian, Brazil has the Sachi. I mean, what else? Like the fairy is a kind of a trickster figure, or Puck, right? Puck from Midsummer Night's Dream. So it just goes on and on. It's pretty interesting. So you can see, and I think you can see an aspect of the Grateful Dead and some of these guys maintaining that folkloric connection. Yeah.
Well, no, exactly. And, steal your face right off of your head, right? That's like the classic, Grateful Dead line. Like I told you what I said, steal your face right off of your head. Steal your face. What does that mean? This is the resonant reality and actually used in terms of specific types of mind control programming, right? Because your face is stolen, your identity, yourself, right? Your how you interact with the world, in a sense, your essence, even though you still have your head, you still think you're functioning autonomously, but and that's part of it, right? But then at the same time, they're saying this is the whether you want to call it revelation of the method or this idea of a voluntary thing. We are the pranksters, right? We are telling you that we are doing this, right? If you give someone LSD and, you have all these experimental frequencies and these, crazy, extremely disturbing, traumatic, auditory visual events, and someone doesn't even know they've taken LSD, that's a little bit more than a prank, right? You can have permanent, and it's very common. I mean, people had permanent psychosis, right? And they just laughed it off. Oh, even on the bus, right? When they were driving around the country, distributing LSD throughout the country. People would get on the bus and go insane, or people that were with the merry pranksters totally lost their minds. And it was just, oh, that's just part of it. No big deal, whatever.
Right.
Well, that's kind of a big deal to me, man. If that happened to me, it's, so stealing your face is really like, you are becoming a imprinted, mind controlled slave, but also, it's almost like you'll never be able to live the life that you could have because part of your identity has been removed and is now in this process that you most likely you voluntarily acquiesce to, even if the trickster was hiding it, right? But still, it's a trickster, right? And if they say it in front of them, you meet the coyote, right? The coyote is a trickster. So,
Right.
and it goes through all these cultures, but then people think they'll get something, or, they dismiss their intuition. They move forward, or else they think, oh, I'll get something I really want out of this, right? So,
No, it's fascinating. It's really fascinating that they had these kind of components in all their music. And steal your face, like the whole mind control thing's incredible. They're much smarter. I didn't know how intellect, just like the trickster, right? Something of high intellect, tricking people. You're ready for the next audio?
Yeah, go ahead.
Labor.
I have little spaces in between, so.
We have curiosity, John. Okay, anyway, this night, this we have to come up to. These guys are trying to make a commercial thing go. Okay, there's mainly two groups. There's the San Jose group and there's the color awful. Now, there's interchange between them, but there's mainly those two. The San Jose group included Pigpen only because I could, he could get it, only because he needed the dough. Yeah. Okay. I paid him 15 a night, and it was groovy. I was getting a good deal. I was getting a very good deal. This chick, lady, she would take care of getting on stage, you see, and it was cool. And then he played his set, which was when people had to count and down a bit, okay? Yeah. And it was groovy, and we put the little lights low because he didn't like to get up on the stage. Straight shot. Yes. He gets better at it. He's taken him 3 years to do a solo now. He gets out and does a little solo number. Yeah. Yeah. I recall too when he jumped on in the car with us to go get the X-test bus had been stolen. And we found it stolen? Yeah, by Babs and Babs and some of these guys. The sort of inner core, maybe, if there was one of the pranksters, let's say, the people that were regression could afford to turn on the ones that she found.
So that was it. You mentioned Pigpen and Palo Alto and San Jose groups, right?
Yeah, yes. So this is just all that. The purpose of that clip is just showing that you have the San Jose, the Palo Alto, and tying all this in together, right? And then, again, this is Paul Foster, the programmer, right? So it's and again, we talked last time, about like the charlatans and that whole little scene that, the original sort of LSD rollout scene in Las Vegas, right? I'm sorry, in Nevada, not in Las Vegas, but in Nevada. And, they wore clothing that was connected with the 1850s, with the Wild West, yet groups of people, they emigrated from that center and went to San Francisco and started introducing the psychedelic clothing, right? Mm-hmm. So the actual emanation of these fashions, which serve also to destabilize, right? A little bit. You lose the suit. You suddenly have these day glow colors. What are those colors doing to your brain, right? They're kind of ugly colors. Think about it, like 70s color. I mean, they're not the greatest looking colors. Well, this also has an effect on the mind. But again, it's coming from this group, but then you have the San Jose Palo Alto crowd, which starts in the late 50s. So yeah, we just continue on from there.
You want to hit this is a long, I think this third audio is much longer. So if you want to play that, I'll go ahead and hit it.
If that's the Macy conference seance recording, that's like 15 minutes. So we don't want to play that whole thing, but
I don't know. It's either the third or the fourth. I don't remember. Let's see.
Okay. Yeah. Go ahead and see what it is.
Material out here into some other kind of language, possibly other visual language, so that things would look the way you wanted them to. Reality would behave the way you wanted it to, whether it did or whether it really did or not. So the whole question of what's real and what isn't starts to get real mushy right there. If everybody's experiencing completely subjective realities based on their own temperament or whatever they want, including however far you wanted to take it. Now, this as far as if you think of the drug experience as getting away from something or getting towards something, like getting away from something if you're a ghetto person. Yeah. A nice soft experience like heroin.
This is Jerry, by the way.
Okay.
The objection there seems to be the idea of getting away. You know what I mean? Right. Like what is it all about? So I see basic objection about going on with this virtual reality. If you take it for it, I mean, the whole thing is that it eliminates a lot of the need for all of the other things that we put so much energy into all this time. Communication on every other level starts to be on this. I mean, I'm a musician. I recognize that as a musician, there's a certain chauvinism attached to it, which is the thing of, well, I spent my time learning how to play. You didn't spend time learning how to play, therefore you're not a musician.
Okay, so that was Jerry. That was the third one.
Okay. Yeah. So just notice it starts out saying you go into a completely subjective reality. He's talking about virtual reality, and he's talking about that this, and this is in the 90s, right? Obviously virtual reality was rather primitive at that time, or at least, what we, in the public had access to or whatever. But he's saying that, total subjective reality. You don't need to communicate. You don't need to even learn how to do anything in your life. You can just do it in your fantasy land virtual reality. And he's saying, just because I spent my time learning how to play a musical instrument, the chauvinism, right? It's a arrogance. No, you actually learned a skill. Well, in your virtual reality, you can communicate with, so he's saying an end to actual human beings having actual relationships and actually even developing skills and simply just living in a completely subjective virtual fantasy world, and talking about implementing this on a global worldwide scale, e.g. what? Smart cities, 6G, right? Exact same template. I don't know if you want to. So there's a lot, like, again, he's a smart guy, right? So he's embedding that in there towards and away. He mentions towards or away response, sympathetic, parasympathetic nervous system. That's what he's referencing, right? Drugs that are towards, drugs that are away. So he's using that towards and away as that basic, reactivity of the arousal response, or, of the nervous system, which is actually what, going back to, we started out with that, I'm a little puppet, that, school recording, which serves to send signals, basically jam your nervous system, right? One level, you could say it's analogous to cognitive dissonance, but this is more like nervous system dissonance. You have an attraction towards something, you have an aversion, you have a rest response, you have an arousal response, and you have these both firing at the same time. This is where, yes, you'll go into a state which may seem like a type of ecstasy because you're having like a shutdown, and that's a perfect programming loci, right? But especially if you don't recognize what is happening when that's happening to you, you'll continue to want to be attracted to this state of basically frying out your circuits in your brain and feeling really relaxed, because as opposed to things that are really helpful and that are healing and generate possibilities.
Right.
You can think of how many people you may know or not don't know them that say they get into heavy metal rock scene, they get into punk rock scene, right? But when they go to the show, they feel great. Look at the rest of their lives. They're getting that stimulation. They're getting that, right? They're having an identity they're going with, but actually everything they're doing is harming them, and even harming them in ways that they're not even aware of, because the baseline experience becomes so fragmented, not just on the intellectual or cognitive level, but on the nervous system level, on the experiential level, that you don't even want to go there. If you touch that, you're going to run from that as fast as you can. And you're going to go back to join Jerry, play guitar like Jerry in his virtual reality, transhumanist fantasy land, or, go, I don't know, go, take a bunch of ecstasy and go to a techno club or something. And the basic thing is, you may feel kind of good, but what is this doing to you? What are you doing to yourself, and how dead have you become to your own sensory experience that you require something that's such a total nervous system, light, sound, physical, overload, right? This is the opposite of the subtlety of the higher levels of human potential, right? This is maybe like the din of a battlefield, but anyways,
it's like the Dionysian kind of complex, like that's what they're shooting for, and that's why they call them deadheads, right? It's the deadheads. They're right, and that they become addicted to that state, right? To whatever state the dead is putting them into, and that's why they're so strange. Like they become their own micro or whatever, like subculture, really, because of the music and the information that they're getting and the impulse, and that's why they travel around and follow them. They may, like you said, they may not know consciously what's happening to them, like, so they become almost like you know, the piper and the rats following him around, like they're the ones following the Pied Piper. Don't they have? Doesn't the dead use the Pied Piper iconography in their art and stuff like that? I thought maybe.
Yeah. And you know, by the way, and I cannot find this reference online, but the Merry Pranksters, I think there was some type of, you know, sect in the Middle Ages. I think there was like the Friends of God. So there were some of these, you know, I mean, look at, you seen, bring up like sorry, I always pronounce it wrong. Hieronymus Bosch, right? That painter.
Hieronymus Bosch.
Hieronymus Bosch. Yeah, that Dutch painter. I mean, look at these paintings. There's supposedly nothing known about the guy. Well, obviously he was an initiate, and there was stuff like that going on. You can also look at Rabelais, right? This is where the "do what thou wilt" comes from. Do what thou wilt should be the whole of the law, but actually that comes originally. So Rabelais, you know, it was a monk, or sort of a, you know, a monk on the outs, you know, who wrote these Gargantuan and Patangla. Yeah. And he was, you know, an author that was very controversial, but he actually was referencing what? He's representing Hassani Saba. Nothing is real, everything is permitted, right? The mind encoding of the Hashishans, and also for the initiates. And it's one last thing I'll say here on this tip, though. It's very important to recognize that there's various layers, right? So if we go back to one of the original and most successful models for these sort of esoteric, occult, yet also very practical, political, powerful secret societies, of course, we have the assassins, or the Ismailis. And again, the word assassin comes from the word hashish, because this organization had five levels, right? And so the lowest level was the masses, right? The main body of followers, who are just supposed to be a good, moral person, just follow the rules, whatever, go to the mosque and just basically follow the surface rules. The next level were the people that became the trained assassins. How it worked: they would be selected from the group of the regular followers, brought up to meet the old man of the mountain, right? That imagery, you can see that same imagery if you open up The Song Remains the Same, the Led Zeppelin album, with the guy on the mountain. That's the old man of the mountain, right? So the person is brought up to meet with the head of the order, or one of his deputies, and they say, well, we think you have a real potential. Next thing you know, they are drugged. They wake up, and they had these gardens all over the Middle East, even in Europe, and they would wake up in this paradisical garden. They were, drugged with hashish. There'd be beautiful women there. There'd be music. They'd have like a stream with wine flowing. They could drink and enjoy all they wanted. They'd be drugged again. They would wake up back in the same room. And the guy was like, oh, you close your eyes for a second. It would be a time separation, right? Interval out of time, right? So this is very important. And they would, and then they would be compelled. Well, you've seen paradise. Oh, you must have had a vision of paradise. Now, will you sacrifice your life and, take on a new identity? And if you get a message, you poison or you assassinate so-and-so, right? So they're like sleeper cells, right? And so they would do that. They would, but then that was the fourth level, and you have the third level, second level, and the first level. So each one of these levels has different power, different knowledge, different understanding, and different initiations, right? So again, when Jerry's talking about this, in fact, if you don't mind, we could play that. We can play the next three in a row, and we can play that other one again. The first one you played, just with that caveat in mind, to listen carefully what he's referring to. And again, he's he's a smart guy. He's highly well read, and he also knows how to speak the encoded language that is understood by, say, people that are part of the Macy conferences, or people that are part of, whatever intelligence or cultural initiatives. So we could maybe play that again.
I'll play it again. One of the things, like, the thing was "Ne sais voudras," right? In French, it was "do what thou wilt," which was adopted by Rabelais, right? But also by the Hellfire Club, right? So the entrance to the Hellfire Club, they were known as the friars or monks of Medmenham, was "Ne sais voudras," that same axiom, right? Do what thou wilt. And they were involved in all that weird stuff like you. Gardens, secret hellfire parties, the whole bit. Debauchery. And that they believe, they don't know, I have to read more about it, but those guys were involved. Like one was the exchequer of the whole British Empire at the time. So they're very, very powerful people involved in that.
Oh, how about Benjamin Franklin? They excavated a bunch of bodies, right? That story went out of the skeletons, right, in his basement. There was a bunch of human remains in his basement.
And he was the founder of the first, I think, Masonic Lodge in Philadelphia, or the first Masonic Lodge in the U.S. So he was occulted, no question.
Yeah, but again, just to stress this, that in the Islamic world there was a sect prior to this, and this had a similar type of process, but they led people into it, and eventually you dispense, there is no law, it is do what thou wilt, but they had violent mayhem, rape and pillage, all you want. They ended up getting 30, they took over Mecca. I mean, it was incredibly powerful. But the Ismaili, the Hashishans, or this particular sect, they learn the lesson. You do this underground. You don't, and you only give this knowledge to certain people, but you remain in control, and people get limited arrays of understanding, right? You know what I mean? And so even if they came to investigate, and again, they had these mountain fortresses all over. The famous one was Altamont, right? That was the famous, but they had these mountain fortresses all over, right? And they were feared because you never knew who was where. Poison, they could kill anybody anytime they wanted to in the world. So they became the model for the Knights Templar, for the Hellfire Club, for many, many of these other secret societies, because they had the most robust and actually the combination of the occult with very real political power,
right.
And being able to keep everything secret, though, just like the Illuminati, which is real, right? Adam Weishaupt and all that. I mean, the Illuminati was a real organization. Now, whether people carry the Illuminati over to the past the 18th century is probably not correct. It does serve as a nice catch-all, but the Illuminati absolutely use that same model for this type of secret initiatory society, right? And
they're being acknowledged kind of as a important component of the Enlightenment at that time. So like the German scholars today are studying and credibly look into the Illuminati because it was full of kind of they're aristocrats of the time, the educated aristocrats, right?
Yeah, and luckily, just they had the guy got struck by lightning in 1783, the courier, and then they also raided the home. So there are actual documents, right? There's the actual documents of the Illuminati and how they just made up these different religions or spiritual paths or different degrees. Total BS, right? They'd say whatever they wanted to get people in, and then they did weed people out at certain levels too. But notice we talk about. One thing that I kind of mentioned in the very beginning is this mass induction, right? Mass induction. So now we're able to go, oh, now we get this rock and roll. Now we get this sex, drugs, do what thou wilt. This is the mass level. This is like level 4 of the Ismailis, right? You're not on the top of the pyramid. You're getting inducted. You're getting this knowledge as an induction, also as a way to break down your own, whatever you call it, your morality, your personal core, to offer these temptations and get you to break with what you know to be right because it's socially acceptable, or you're told by Tim Leary that you'll be able to find God, and all we have to do is take LSD and sit on our asses all day, and the whole world will just change, man. Turn on, tune in, drop out. What's worse than that? Well, anyways.
And what happened? Did the world really change? No, not really. It led down the primrose path by the Pied Piper.
Yeah. So play that. There's like 3 in a row. You can play the one, if you can, that we just listened to with what we just talked about in mind, and listen to it very carefully. So go ahead.
Let's see if I can find where it started.
Possibly other visual language so that things would look the way you
That's
want it.
Garcia, right?
Yeah, that's a little bit further up. Yeah, I think you're about.
I think
material out here into some other kind of language, possibly other visual language, so that things would look the way you wanted them to.
Can you pause?
Reality would behave the way you
Oh,
wanted it.
So this is right here. This is Neuralink. He's talking about Neuralink, right? He's saying encoding. That's what I'm saying. You know, there's a lot of density encoding the visual information that comes in your cortex. So it's going through some kind of a medium, virtual reality medium. So now he's talking about, computer technology, not necessarily LSD, but he's comparing them. So it's, what's the smart city? What's the 6G? You see what they want you to see, right? Yeah. They show the people and they can, see all these cool things that aren't there. But how about Pokemon Go, which was another rollout for this whole system? You run out in front of the car. So this is what he's talking about, is it's going to go on the neurological level, but he's not saying that this will be imposed upon people, but it's a wonderful, fun option that you can see what you want to see. It doesn't matter what's out there or not out there. You can choose to how information is interpreted that reaches your brain. Okay. Which is, we're talking on a neurological level. So he's directly referencing this stuff. Go ahead.
all the stuff we're in now, right?
Yep. Absolutely.
Whether it did or whether it really did or not. So the whole question of what's real and what isn't starts to get real mushy right there. If everybody's experiencing completely subjective realities based on their own temperament or whatever they want,
Okay, you pause it right there.
However far you wanted to take.
So now he's saying that everybody is experiencing their own reality based upon their own subjective temperament, right? They're just living in this is like, there was a science fiction story I read when I was a kid, but it was I don't remember the author. Was written in the 1920s, I believe. But in the story, this guy goes to the future. He goes on the city streets. Nobody is there, right? Then they have these big, giant skyscrapers. Inside the skyscrapers, people are there lying on these beds, and they go into these, whether it's a Wild West motif, whether they go to some orgiastic, Hugh Hefner sex party, or whether they're, flying a space shuttle, but they're just lying in these beds. Everyone is now encoded completely in this cocoon of a permanent subjective reality. Imagine that. Does that sound great? Do you want to be stuck in a permanent subjective reality with no way out? But he's lauding this, and he's talking about, again, on a neurological level, he's talking about a Neuralink thing but then what is real anymore if everybody's completely having their brains, flipped into these alternative virtual fantasy lands? There's no more reality. He's like, that's what he's saying. What is the smart city, right? That is, you're in your room, you hook up to your virtual reality, your actual life is complete misery, and you're eating bugs, even probably sharing your underwear or something, own nothing and be happy. But yet you go into your virtual synthetic world, but yet this is programmed on the neurological level. So you don't even necessarily, which he's not talking about, because I would hypothesize he's on a much higher level of initiation in these things than the average person. Again, this isn't like 1990. So you think about it, this is years ago, right? Very prescient. Does that make sense what I was saying? Yeah. I just wanted to foreground, because he has a type of a cadence that it's like the stoner cadence. And unless you listen carefully to understand his meaning, right? Because he's saying it, obviously, I think he's talking like Stuart Brand or whatever. There's someone who's on the same level, but there's also a level of interpretation for the fan that listens to this. They're not going to know. They're going to say, oh, that sounds really cool, man. So go ahead and continue.
Now, this, as far as, if you think of the drug experience as getting away from something or getting towards something, like getting away from something if you're a ghetto person, a nice soft experience like heroin,
Right.
The objection there seems to be the idea of getting away, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, what is it all about? So I see basic objection about going on with this virtual reality. If you take it for it, I mean, the whole thing is that it eliminates a lot of the need for all of the other things that we put so much energy into all this time. Communication on every other level. starts to be unnecessary. I mean, I'm a musician. I
You can
recognize
pause it
that
for a second.
there's
So,
certain
so this is really important, right? So this ties into this is cybernetic. This goes into the Macy conferences, the cybernetic process, right? Which is sort of the architecture, the blueprint for our current attempted world order that's attempted to be imposed on humanity or voluntarily accepted by humanity. But he's saying all the things we spent so much time in. No, not the Grateful Dead. No, the entire human species put so much time into art, civilization, law, morality, architecture, everything. It's no longer necessary. And communication itself is no longer necessary, right? Communication, because you are essentially in a self-enclosed cybernetic feedback system where you're getting the information piped in from the outside, right?
Right.
People are already like this now anyways, right? Even without having the Neuralink implanted, right? But he's saying dispense with everything of human history. We don't need it anymore because now you can. And he's saying, what's wrong? Heroin is a soft experience. It's a nice soft, it sounds like you're going to a friggin' spa. He's talking about heroin to get out of the ghetto. And people say there's something wrong with that. What's wrong, man? Just want to escape. So just to have a nice soft experience. Maybe Valium is a soft experience. I don't think heroin is. So he's also noticed this is a much harder, quote unquote, drug. This implanted virtual reality, Neuralink, neural matrix, hive mind, 6G planet is a much harder drug than heroin, right? Okay, we can continue.
All right, let's do it.
there's a certain chauvinism attached to it, which is the thing of, well, I spent my time learning how to play. You didn't spend time learning how to play, therefore you're not a musician.
You just keep
the
playing.
end. So here we go.
Keep playing. But yeah, he's saying, so the chauvinism, right? But he's saying, well, no, just think about that. Like, if you didn't spend the time, I spent the time learning how to play. Well, you did something in your life, right? All I did with my life is just go to shows and take drugs. So I'm a friggin' burnout, well, not me personally, but you know what I'm saying? But don't think I'm better than you just because I'm a multi-millionaire rock star with, access to, every kind of luxury and social status. And I actually did something in my real life in the world. That's not even necessary. That's chauvinism. You don't have to do anything. You can just plug into this, artificial matrix and pretend you're a great musician. And that's better for you, slave. I mean, he doesn't say that, but that's, does that sound like, I think that even if you suck at guitar and you're not a star, at least you tried to do something real with your life, right? You didn't spend all day just playing video games. You know what I mean?
That's what they have planned. That's kind of his idea. Like, if you can't do it in the real world, then go into the cybernetic world and you can just zone out.
Yeah, well, not even zone out. Your brain is going to be encoded, right? You're going to be, goes into transhumanism. Let's continue. He talks about transhumanism in a bit.
Census channel on your video, or your cable TV or whatever.
So that may be where we find out what humans are for.
It may take that to do it. Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, I can visualize something like that where it's the input channel as well as the output channel where you take from it, you give to it, and take from it at the same time. Yeah, like a free two-way kind of deal. And everybody would be, and it would be constantly making decisions, microsecond to microsecond.
Yes.
And this, switching around and doing stuff of its own. So you would enter yet another random element in there and then see what comes through the spaces. And my feeling is that there is a coherence there, but it's not recognizable through normal frameworks. You need a hyper normal framework.
Yes.
So that is. You need to jump to hyper normalcy.
Well, there are always a few people who are hyper normal.
Absolutely, that's exactly right. I think everybody experiences them here and there. That's all. It's just we don't have good language for speaking about them, really.
And that's right. But that's what a lot of the semiotic soup that the deadhead culture has. There is a lot of.
All right,
So-
that's, I think, the fourth one.
Yeah. So see what he's saying? He's talking about a full, complete control of both inputs and outputs of all external and internal human experience, the consensus channel. I can visualize it. And I don't know if I have the clip here, but he talks about very directly that somebody has to be in charge of that, that, we're going to control that. So so using cybernetic terminology, inputs and outputs of the system, right? So, the black box model, right? You have the input outputs. So he's talking about a full control of what you think and experience, what you see outside, what you see inside, and manipulating and changing consensus reality. And he mentions the Grateful Dead as a semiotic soup. Well, what is that? Semiotics, right? This is signs, meaning, communication, formulation of reality with language and experience. He describes it as a soup, as just a mismatch, as an experimental primordial, soup or slime. And once you learn how to play with these components of consciousness, you can go ahead and impose that. And we are now staring this in the face. Right now. I mean, this is what 6G is, right? 6G is you have it. You are a biological receptor for this. The internet is going. You charge and discharge the internet signal. It is overriding your own perceptions, or at least to a certain extent, and creating a new consensus reality, controlling inputs and outputs. What's outside. But even what you think is being registered and modeled and controlled. So what he doesn't say directly, but he's saying if you are outside of this new control consensus reality, then you need to be checked. You need to be limited. We will control what you can think. We will control even the possibility, just like 1984, right? We will control the possibility of you having that thought. You can continue if you want, or chime in.
No, that's interesting. Yeah. Not a very positive worldview, I'd say.
Beings anatomically for several 100,000 years, wandering around, hunting and gathering.
Yeah.
And then suddenly, at the same time, they start.
Is this Garcia again?
That's oh gosh, it's Garcia, and he's another one of the dead guys. I'd have to look up that thing.
Okay,
So it's Garcia, and it's
Started multiplying. So what this paleontologist that I quoted has the theory that
it's Owsley, I think. Owsley. It's Owsley and Garcia.
Psychedelic experiences.
Yeah.
And the reason that they were is so that because the tribal encyclopedia, the amount of information that people needed to know in order to move to a new way of life, suddenly increased.
That's right. Yeah, that's
so how are you
that's
going
a good notion. Yeah, the point is there's more information now than you can pass along comfortably in an oral tradition. Say, a strictly speaking culture has a problem.
Nobody's delineated. Nobody's constant.
Right.
There's a lot of extraneous stuff, like for instance the satellites that measure the atmosphere.
Yeah.
There's billions and billions and billions of bytes of data. Only maybe 2% of which are actually useful. They don't know what the rest are for. They don't know what good they
That's
are.
right. People want to fly through that.
Fill up tables and things.
Yeah.
And anyway, who knows for sure how complex or how uncomplex the ancient people's lives were. They may have been in many ways as absolutely full and complicated as anything in those.
I don't think there's any reason to assume they weren't. I mean, if you look at some of these cultures now, and there's still a few of them.
No, that's true. See, but that's what I mean about the singularity.
Yeah.
That the entire human race faced a singularity when one small group discovered, technology.
Right.
We can live a different way.
Right.
Eventually.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
they were keyed into the singularity back then too. Wow.
well, yeah. So what they're talking about is that there's a new, basically, there's too much information. We can't really handle all the information overload. But obviously, they're smart guys, bits and bytes. And then the new singularity is what? Man and machine. Man merge with machine. So you don't have to use your poor brain to memorize things. You don't have to develop your mind. Everything is there on the internet that's in your brain. that you just access it. So you don't have to retain any information. You can just enjoy. And this is the new, he said, as a human species, right? He's talking about the entire human species evolving to what? To the transhuman singularity. Back in, you know, how many years ago? Like 30 years ago, right? So how many people knew about that term back then? You know, not many. So, you know, and with Paul Foster, who was a computer programmer, saying, I'm programming. I'm a programmer. I'm a human programmer. So anyways, we can.
Right. And Garcia was dead by 1995. So, like, this has to be before. That's really remarkable, like, how much they knew.
Yeah.
Must have been just the environment, Palo Alto and all that.
Yeah. It was all just fun. Okay. Go ahead and play it.
Trait is knowledge of the of or culture in homogeneous groups. The of either modification.
Okay, go ahead and pause it.
Or search.
So that's something different. We can maybe come back to that. That is that got out of order. That is actually a recording of the Macy conference's seance. They had a seance. They did this occult thing, and there's an audio recording of it. It's quite interesting. We don't want to. It's like 15 minutes. We don't have to hear the whole thing, but we can maybe cue that up a bit later. We'll go.
Let me go through this. Let me see where it is on here. Let's go 15 minutes, so that's 22.
Yeah, so we could just go back to the normal video since I got my lighting dialed in today.
So it's still the seance.
It's validity.
That's still the seance, right?
Yeah, and there's a lot of weird stuff in there. You know, there's different binaural stuff. Yeah.
I think that a lot of people have.
This may be someone from the radio talking about radio programming. I think that's, yeah.
Is that what this is? Let's play that.
I think so, yeah.
Hey, am I going to be in the show, lab?
Bonnie Simmons.
I mean, I don't think it's just radio that's like that. I think most people are stark raving mad. A lot of people hypothesize that it was food additives that has done most of this to us. There are others, of course, who think that it was psychedelics. Of course, but talented people are a little bit different. I think that ultimately the people that I work with are the sanest group of people I know. They may all have certain little idiosyncrasies that make them totally unemployable anywhere else. But at KSAN, it all seems to work quite well. I trust them all pretty much with my life. Oh, there's a few. I wouldn't go quite that far, but for the most part, I think they're very sane, rational, kind people.
So that's somebody. It's a clip I got from God knows where, but I think that lady is connected with one of these kind of think tanks, you know, community things. And so, but in the beginning of that, she lets it out, right? She talks about people being by and large insane, but then she says that, you know, KSNet, and that's a acronym for whatever institution or agency she's with, and we could probably look that up. And I have those notes somewhere, but she's saying right there, I mean, she's someone who's kind of part of this, was part of it, and she's letting it out right there. Some people say it was because of food additives. Some people say it was because of the psychedelics, you know, and there's people that are unemployable in other aspects. And then she's, you know, anyway, so now I thought that was just an interesting sort of admission, you know, from somebody just let something slip. Maybe they shouldn't have, but it's there because I got a copy of it. Just kind of like, so, and then we can just play the last one there.
Managing editor of Radio and Records magazine. You know, we make a statement, we call this concept radio, and everybody has a different idea of what that means. I mean, radio is nothing more than a form of technology. Now, the thing that most of the people who are in radio really are doing is a thing called radio programming. Now, there's a big difference between radio and radio programming. Now, most of the top 40 stations were the result of extreme, careful radio programming. The radio is just the technology through which this programming is brought to you. Now, some people will go into radio and try to see how they lend themselves to somebody's radio programming. Other people, and I am of that school, think of themselves as being the program and looking at radio technology, the vehicle to bring it to them.
Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends. We're so glad you could attend. Come inside, come inside.
Okay.
So that's all the audio, unless you want to go back and listen to.
Yeah, the Macy. We can maybe put that on at a later time. It is interesting, but we'll come back to that later if we have time. But I thought so. That's the president of the American. He's head of the whole American radio recording organization, right? That guy, and he's saying radio is just a medium for programming. Okay, programming, and it's easy to forget how important the radio was and how FM radio was central in the distribution of this, counterculture, right? How these, these radio stations were brought up. How about that movie about the offshore radio station in England,
Right,
playing the rock? And why was that illegal? What was that doing to the people, or what happened? And he says very clearly, program. He didn't say I'm the program. I'm on the other side of it. Radio is just a medium for this programming. Okay. And that goes for any television programming, whatever type of programming. And so I just thought that both of those two quotes taken in context from, sort of insiders who sort of, they're just speaking honestly, right? I mean, this is the truth. And tie that in with Jerry and all the other stuff. You see that it's not just a one-off, and just that obviously, Sid Vicious was not part of this inner circle, but with their level of knowledge, how many people in 1990 or 1992 knew about the singularity? What was the level of virtual reality in the early 90s? Give me a break. It was like, playing Pong or something.
Yeah, no, it is way ahead of their time. Way ahead of their time. Almost really prophetic, almost like about the issues we have now, 30 years later.
And the singularity, like, when did that really start hitting the mainstream? It's been it hasn't been that long, right? I'd say a decade, maybe. I started hearing like Ray Kurzweil.
Yeah, Kurzweil. That's what I think really he popularized it.
But I think this is, okay, maybe Ray Kurzweil came up with the term prior to this interview, but Ray Kurzweil was, he was, at least to my knowledge, in my interaction with that term, it started becoming maybe about a decade ago. You started really hearing about it, but before that, it was almost unknown, right?
Yes.
And there's another related to the singularity, if you heard of the Singleton, right? This is another wonderful sort of proposal, and the Singleton is it's an AI driven satellite information network that controls all media, all commerce, all information flow, and basically directs the entire planet beyond national sovereignty. So this, with the idea of the Singleton, which is sort of an odd phrase, but it sounds like some kind of clothing article you buy at the Gap or something. But the Singleton is, and this is brand new. This is a new development. So the Singleton, this is a total top-down artificial intelligence control of the entire planet, everything, including electrical grid, including information, including phone calls. And what's the reason for it? Oh, well, we don't want some malignant AI to take control of the planet, so we're going to devise this.
We're going to do it ourselves, right?
We're going to make this
AI to do it. We're going to do it.
That quote is hilarious. Like, that's a justification. Like, we're just going to go ahead and we'll just create exactly. It's like, you're afraid of being eaten by a lion. We're just going to go ahead and buy a lion and put it in your house to protect you from being eaten by a lion. I mean, yeah, anyways, we can continue. But like I said, so these guys, they're not, and again, using cybernetic language, using language that is for people in the know, right? If you try to read the Macy conference minutes, you try to read Bateson's writing, right? It's just like, what the heck? He's not clear, right? Unless you're in the know. Lacan, I have some stuff on Lacan also, right? I talked about the inner mirror. Unless you're an initiate into that language, it's really not going to make much sense.
Right.
No. And so the input output, he's talking about the black box. He's talking about cybernetic control systems. And this was experiment, right? They did that in Chile, right? They had CyberSyn. They had this looks like a Star Trek control grid, and they ran this model of this total computer controlled society. And you had it was a Beardsley, one of these English lords who's kind of a occult socialist, but he has like he designed this factory. He's again connected with the Macy conferences and with allied circles, and he designed this factory based off of looks like occult sort of we call yantras, different like pointed stars, but it was a working factory. But it also had this wonderful feature that workers who are not able to fulfill their duty would be executed and disposed of in the same factory. And this is a guy is like he was doing yoga and tripping and all that. So this is the kind of people we're talking about. Why? Because they're on a different level, right? You're on level, even if you become part of this. You're like I meant the Hashishans. You're the guy that was taken up, and thinks they went to paradise, and actually you were drugged by the leader. You're a do what thou wilt. Maybe the level 3s, and then you have the level 2s and the level 1s. They all have different scopes and different valuation systems, right? So if so even what Jerry's talking about, they're talking about from almost like a godlike realm. Well, we can have everything anyone sees and hears in the external world. If we don't want them to see that, they won't see it. We don't want them to think that, we'll stop that. We're going to devise a new consensus reality based on a transhumanistic man-machine hybrid. And they're talking about it like it's a good thing. For on their level, it most likely is, right? So, okay. So enough of sorry, Jerry. I'm going to be attacked by the ghost of Jerry tonight. I'm just kidding.
Probably. Did you know that Celine Dion recorded a song called Face Que Tu Voudras, and it was deliberately based upon Rob Lay?
No, I didn't.
Yeah, it's cool. I just found that. I was looking up the full phrase. Let me see if I can share this. So it's still around. It's from a song in, when was this? 1986. Peaked at number 36, spending 12 weeks on the chart. And this is got to be one of her earliest songs, holy smokes. But it was Quebec, all French.
Wow.
Interesting. Anyway. Yeah, so, and also, Kurzweil's Singularity book didn't come out until 2005. So,
somebody, sorry, I'm Mr. Utter, not Mr. McCann.
Oh, they're just chatting on the chat.
Okay, that's cool.
They're talking to each other.
I just thought, man, my what is it? Andy Warhol said, in the future, everybody will be famous for 30 seconds. My 30 seconds of fame. I've been confused with Sean McCann. No, okay, no. I'm just kidding. I love.
You have
Sean.
More than 30 seconds. You're like literally on the top 5 of my guests to listen to. Yes, there's no doubt about it. People are totally interested. Do you have time? Do you want to take a few questions, or do you want to keep talking? I probably have another 20 minutes. We'll be at the 90-minute mark in 20 minutes.
Okay. Yeah, and I have all these documents. We won't get to any of those. I brought some actual documentation of some of this research and some of the actual stuff. Probably won't get to that. But just again, Crowley and Leary, right? So acquired the Enochian keys of John Dee, was intent on accessing the promised 19-dimension ethers of consciousness, alternate realities that Dee described. So that's also like string theory, right? We have string theory, we have physics, we have the theory of evolution, right? All this is related to the theory of evolution, which just seems to be so rock solid, right? Yeah,
100% viable, man. I totally believe it. We started in one cell. There was a lightning bolt that hit a pool, millions of years ago, and that's how life, came out. Even though nobody's ever seen any kinds change in the whole history of humanity, but yeah. That's a huge psyop. That's a whole nother show. But
yeah. But anyways, so these Enochian keys. So there are, you could say there's definitely energetic or astral, a lot of these entities. I mean, this is the domain of those on this path of global domination and whatever they're doing. And so these are, there are ethers, there's different levels of consciousness, and there's also these astral planes, which is a lot was going on with, invoking these types of possession. I don't want to get too esoteric, but this does exist. And you could also make it more sort of material. But again, the person is a material basis to evoke the spirit. That means the person is like the substance. The person is like the, whatever, the gasoline that runs your car. That's what he means by material basis, right? It's not. So the material basis, so that means that, you're being used, right? They're feeding off of your energy. They're feeding off of you. You're the material basis for this vast alchemical working. You could say for the the takeover of the planet by what do you ever want to call it? The big old smiley Lucifer, your friend, or whatever you want to call energetic forces. That's what it is. Okay, and this is a ritual on entirely new principles. I wrote mostly invocation and poetry. The idea was to work up the magical enthusiasm, which of course means the enthusiasm, the spirit, right? To be filled with the spirit through the exhilaration induced by music. So what he's doing is he's using music, he's using poetry, he's using the performing arts to not only allow the higher level initiates to raise their power, to do things in the material world, but also to use the audience as basically you're using them as it's like a type of human sacrifice, except for you're not dying, right? But you're losing parts of your psyche, you're losing parts of your will. And then we can leave that there, and we can you just go ahead to the 6G stuff, and I'll take questions while that's.
I have a few questions. Yeah, here's one.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Let's see. This is for you. Do you have an opinion on the current music industry? I view decloaking at this stage, but the population remains mostly oblivious. That's from Sabrina. Any thoughts on that?
I mean, the current music industry, the music industry has suffered, and Corona was probably one of the biggest things. But prior to that, you have a disconnection from a lot of new music not getting promoted. Whether or not you like this or that style of music, there was some interesting stuff even came out in the 60s. A lot of interesting bands, the Canterbury Circle. There were outlets, right? But basically a lot of music, you go all over the world and you see people playing the same classic rock songs. You go to the Philippines, you go to Thailand, you go to Japan, the same repertoire has sort of become planet wide, right? And people do new music and that sounds the same as that stuff, right? Or it's different genres. So it's much more mechanical. It's much more AI driven, so to speak. And I think there's a level of manipulation that is both more subtle and then also much more gross or obvious. We can look at the sequence: 1950s optimism, 1960s optimism with darkness, 1970s ego, the me generation, but also lots and lots of dark stuff. Then you have the nihilism of punk, right? And so you're going through almost this archaeology once this sort of circle was complete, it's just being reimposed on culture, and these things just recycle each other. So you know what I mean? So it's almost stopped. It's almost outside of time, right? It's like the end of history. It's like the natural ebb and flow of human culture is being placed into this like fishbowl, and you circle around. But anyways, you go through this, you can see the teen suicide rate from 1950 to like 1970 went up 300%. Why? Because of the music. A lot of this stuff, even suicide, what the teenagers' adult rate stayed the same. Look at crime, sexual promiscuity. I have many studies, direct empirical studies related to, certain types of very sexual, either like R&B, gangster rap, massive increase in violence, massive increase in pregnancy, drug use, school dropouts, depression. And you can trace these things very, very directly, from the certain styles of music. I mean, look at the crack cocaine epidemic and look at gangster rap, right? So when I was much younger, in my 16, 17, whatever, there was some hip hop stuff, man, that was really seemed like a higher consciousness level, and there were some groups out there like De La Soul or whatever, that all got shunted and suppressed by the gangster rap. Now where are we at? Not that there aren't good artists out there. I'm not stating that, right? But you have a regurgitation. You have, everything is the same. You have very, very, you could play that Britney Spears video where she's dressed up like a baby. Have you seen that? With all this, you probably don't want to. So Britney Spears has a song and it starts out with, I think I want him to bleep me. And she's dressed up like an infant in a crib.
Oh,
the name of the song is Baby Talk. So if you want to see where their music industry is at, look at that. So I'm talking about the very direct level of programming. And there's lots of, I kind of stopped analyzing some of the stuff because it just got so grotesque.
Yeah, so it's not even the music, it's the musicians too. She's a mess. She looks like she got put through the ringer by something. I don't know what it is.
Oh yeah, well, you watch that Baby Talk thing. That is, it's unbelievable. But anyways, what I'm saying is that creativity has been shut down. There's much less opportunities for people to get access, right? Because you have physical record sales are quite down. A lot of the big arena rock bands, there's not even the big arena shows that much anymore, right? So, and then also you have, I don't know, there's a transformation. So basically a lot of what people are doing is they want to become a star. They record their song on their phone. They're doing the social media, right? So, and I did these seminars. I went through even like Motown recordings and, how, my record label, and a lot of it is just running social media feeds all the time, showing pictures, showing this, showing that. And that's how you build your sales. Like, I don't want to, it's my private life, If I'm out in the garage hitting the ball and, shooting ducks with a shotgun, I'm not putting that on social media. Not that I do that, but it's my private life. What does that have to do with my music? Why do you have to become a slave to this? Because in a sense, you're what Jerry's talking about. You're uploading your consciousness onto this virtual space, right? Your input and your output become this virtual world, without any real human interaction with, and then look at all these, we could go through many examples, TikTok challenges, people, dying. I mean, there are all kinds of stuff going on. So it seems like it's more personal, but then it's just more like you have to sort of completely expose yourself as a human product to make it in the industry. Even if you look at major artists, I'm sure they have their teams doing all their social media, but I mean, I guess
they're front men. There's like secret guys making all the music. Those guys they're not even musicians. They're really performers, a lot of them. And that's kind of like one of the big secrets in the music industry is like, these guys aren't writing any of their stuff. I'm sure the Dead wrote their own stuff. But Sneaky Pete asks, do you have any good intel on the Process Church of the Final Judgment's links to intelligence communities?
Oh, wow. So yeah, the Process Church of the Final Judgment, that's like a whole series. They were very, very, very important. They were connected with the rock aristocracy, right? Connected with Paul McCartney. Connected with the Son of Sam, connected with a lot of other groups, connected, like look at the Parliament Funkadelic, right? The album Maggot Brain has a text from the Process Church of the Final Judgment.
He was a member of it. He was a member of the Process. The guy, African-American guy, I forgot his name.
George Clinton. Yeah.
George Clinton. Yeah.
And so the Process Church was very influential, especially, and I think we maybe have discussed this or alluded to it, but I went through a brief whirlwind tour of sort of some of the different takeaways from these music, eras, right? So if you don't have the innocence of the 1950s, it's, you have compare and contrast, right? You have the 60s with we can change the world, then you have the nihilism of the 70s. But what you have right at the same time, what's alluded to with the Rolling Stones, what's alluded to with Altamont, what's alluded to with Let It Bleed, what's alluded all over the place with Charles Manson, right? Setting up the whole serial killer terror, right? That many different groups, right? We forget, like, this was all over the place, right? And so then you have, of course, the Son of Sam, and then you of course the Zodiac Killer and the Son of Sam. So the Son of Sam has been linked to the Process Church, and but the Process Church, they're saying that it's basically a Gnostic type of dualism, right? It's like, well, we're, and that has the same sort of initiatory process. It starts out as, it looks like kind of a cool countercultural thing, and then it turns out, oh, we also worship Satan, because Satan is also God, so we worship both sides. And then you go further, and next thing you know, you are a serial killer or running mind control camps, and they're still out there, right? They have Friends of the Animals, so they have the Process Church, best friends, and then you have like the Hillary Clinton, Obama connected with them, right? And look at maggot brain. I mean, imagine if you're taking LSD. Look at that. And even
the liner notes to maggot brain consist of a lengthy quotation from the Fear issue of the Process magazine, and America Eats Its Young reproduces the text of a Process sermon about America. Love our enemies, love Satan, love Satan. Yeah. So it's there.
Yeah. And so, I mean, the Process Church, I mean, I had a bunch of material on them, and I'll have to like archive that, because it's quite interesting. I mean, there's many connections, but yeah, I mean, the Process Church, if you look at a deployment wing, right, of these various things, right, you got Jolly West, right? He did one of his first successful experiments was that guy at where was it, Oklahoma or whatever, right, who went out and killed the girl, had no memory of it, right? So so they they served and some, you could say the occultic aspect is just for bells and whistles, just for show. You could say it's real, but absolutely as acting as agents. But again, I think when we say intelligence community, it's not like the CIA, like everybody in the CIA is part of this or whatever. Not at all, right? You have cells within cells, just like that Illuminati model, just like the
Process Church is the same model, Hans. It's the same model. It had an inside and outside. You had to spend 2 years to get in the inner area. There was tons of hierarchy. You had to do tasks. It was like its own internal family. I mean, it really was. They call themselves a family, just like Manson. So I've done a pretty in detailed research into them in my book. So I read a lot of the stuff.
Well, could you talk about that just a little bit? Because because they had, I just, I hadn't thought about them for a while. I tried to blank it out of my mind, but they kind of faded out. You have all these other cults showing up. There's so many different cults, but I think to me, they were really, really important, especially.
No question. They're totally occult. Genesis P. Orge is a member. Adam Parfrey, I've seen him in ritual meetings with the Process, and his whole, book publishing empire is very influential. And he's been around. Parfrey passed away, but they're important in the underground culture. There's no question about it that they're right in the center. But what is it? Ultimate Evil talks about them. Sons of Sam, and Berkowitz said that like their goal was to just create terror. That's what their whole goal was in New York City, and they did it because New York at that time was very violent. But these murders, I think, of the innocent people created a total terror feeling in the psychosphere, no question, by intent, by people in the Process Church. And he wouldn't even mention the Process Church. And he went way Christian right at the, when he got in jail. They tried to kill him in jail. Somebody tried to kill him. He has a huge scar. So Process Church, at certain points was very powerful. Then they rebranded themselves they called themselves the Foundation, and they had a new kind of symbol, but they were still around. And Wiley, the guy, I think it was Love, Fear, Death, Hate was the name of his book. He was number 3 in the whole organization. And he published that book through Parphrase, right? What was their name of their press?
Oh, yeah. Oh, I know what you're talking about.
But yeah, but so I mean, they're around, and some people are doing really good work. There's this one girl on Twitter, Dana, forgot what her tag is, but she's been like categorizing all these people as best friends today that are on the best friends site and tracing them back to their involvement in the process in the 60s. So they are still around. I don't know if they're active, but they're in, I think, Kanab, Utah or something outside southern Utah. But it's crazy. Yeah. So the process church intelligence, that's a whole nother question. I think that's a whole nother show too. But
Yeah. But it is but they're coming, from, you'd go, that ties into L. Ron Hubbard, right? Scientology, ties into Jack Parsons, circles back to Crowley. But yeah, I would definitely be interested in
Leary. Leary met them, like, I think when he was upstate New York at, what was the place it was at? I forgot the name of it, but like he was going to New York City and like, I think he became a member for a day or something like that. Like he was at one of their meetings in New York City in the late 60s or early 70s, right around the time that a lot of nasty stuff was going on. Sean asks, does Hans think that the AI is being created to be a physical body for non-corporeal entities or for non-corporeal entities?
So the AI, you can, which I was considering going into it, obviously not, but if you look at the 6G and then compare that to these types of religious or secret societies, where, and I had a number of quotes, talking about using electromagnetic and, astral communication channels and electromagnetic conditioning, breaking down of the mind. So the person becomes essentially a vehicle of this external force. And the AI is, I don't know, it plays for non-corporeal entities. I mean, in a sense, the AI it's the suicide of voluntary suicide of humanity, or else the inhuman aspect of humanity deciding to, create a very living nightmare. And so I think if you want to see people possessed by non-corporeal entities, just turn on the news. I mean, it's the level of darkness and possession, I think, is out there, all around us. AI basically it serves as a way to exert total control. And there's some people that state that they believe the AI is in, this gets, woo-woo, sort of super woo-woo land, but there's like a giant vast AI that's from another galaxy or solar system that's infusing and taking over the taking over the planet. I think this guy Richard Sauter talks about that, and some other people, which, who knows, man. It kind of seems like it's some kind of non-human, non-corporeal entity. What they're doing to the planet, when you have, everything is genetically modified and they go through all these protocols I have, I mean, there's not going to be many human beings or many forms of life, since we're carbon-based life forms. If you go to zero carbon, you're basically killed all life on Earth. So anyways, that's not really an answer. I should have said I'm not qualified to answer that question, but it's interesting. I mean, AI is for sure real, but what's AI? It's a language. It's not that powerful. It's just, it's a type of neural network computing model that it's like decision trees, but it does gather more data. And in a sense, it incorporates human beings into the AI. So the more you go into the AI, the more you almost become subsumed into this thing. And just as, you lose your ability to, write a high school essay without using the AI, it also feeds off of you, and then it ends up starting to, just like Google algorithms, not only can you dictate what people see, but you can very subtly dictate and manipulate people's behavior. Right. So I don't know if that made any sense, but
I think so. But I think the AI it's interesting. Like you mentioned, performance directed by Donald Campbell, right? Who literally sat on Crowley's knee. He also directed this movie for people out there, which seems to have been lost. It's called Demon Seed. It featured Julie Christie, but it's based on a novel by Dean Koontz. Koontz, it's Koontz, famous, what kind of writer. But it concerns the imprisonment and forced impregnation of a woman by an artificially intelligent computer. So people check out Demon Seed.
And it says an artificial and extremely advanced and autonomous artificial intelligence program, 1977. Well, and the movie you said it's lost or
it just seems to have been forgotten. I don't think it was ever very good. I don't think it was received well, but it just is on that same thing. Like I'm going to inhabit a living entity with some AI. So in 77, pretty interesting.
Yeah. Well, no, it is interesting. And the thing is, if you look at the 6G, if you look at what Jerry's talking about, controlling inputs and outputs of all consciousness, in a sense, it doesn't matter what reality is anymore because we make reality. We decide reality. And if you could just bring up the last few points on my slide, that's a great tie-in.
Yeah, let's go.
I can just finally finish up this PowerPoint it's gone on for ages, right?
Shows, yeah.
Let's see.
We've gotten a lot of good stuff out of it.
So let's see. Hopefully I have the right ones. Okay, here we go. So, and I had some video. We're not going to have time to show it, but this is a quote from, 6G. So 6G will serve as a distributed neural network. Okay, distributed neural network that provides communication links to fuse the physical, cyber, and biological worlds. Physical, cyber, and biological worlds, truly ushering in an era in which everything will be sensed, connected, and intelligent. This, in turn, will lay a solid foundation for intelligence of everything in the future. I think this is from like McKinsey Group or whatever, one of these.
McKinsey,
yeah, it's not from some conspiracy theorists. This is the actual language. So 6G, I remember when I saw a presentation on 6G, I think in 2020, and I thought there's no way this is real, but it is real. And 6G, it feeds off of your negative emotions, right? Your anger, your fear, your hatred. And these negative emotions are used to power this network. And so say, William, if you were in my upstairs bedroom and we're both 6G nodes, we would be connecting wirelessly to each other as nodes in this 6G network, including our physical biology, right? Including our DNA. That's what they want. DNA, every single object, everything. And you're, in a sense, you're a node of this network, which is so you're just simply maybe one neuron, but your whole biology is, it's a worse type of, the Mary Prankster's hive mind writ large. You want to talk about hell realm. This is the 6G, man. And this is what it is. I mean, this is what they want to do. It's absolutely insane. And then if you have what Jerry's talking about, who's going to control the consensus reality, you have the Singleton. The Singleton is this vast AI that circles the planet. And this, you look at the model, it's like a giant black cube of Saturn, that will dictate everything. And then you're just, it doesn't, well, anyways, maybe if I did enough LSD and listened to the Dead more, I would think that was a good future.
Right. Right. Some people will like it. They'll love they can just sit around and kind of take a lot of drugs and relax and not have to worry about anything. Right. That's the whole Dead, thing, ethos. Right. So. Yeah.
And so your lower level egotism. So this is an example of how the, I think where my 6G notes are these things. This is how 6G works. This is the Singleton. This is the AI that is controlling everything from above. And then these are like biological and different types of sensing. And so we're talking about like they're trying to get every single object, everything being encoded into this. You can go through, look, you have these examples energy, you have the, your heart rate, your respiration, you have your vehicle, you have etc. And this is all interlocked and interlinked here with our total pyramid of control with our AI. And this is from the people devising this wonderful new future for us. You don't have to think anymore, though. That's for sure. And
It's terrifying. Yeah.
also, it does. If you look at people that get really caught up, say, in the petty egotism of social media or in all these types of battles, right? You can see people really not going beyond their own limited sort of animal level, right? It's me, mine, this, that, there's no development, there's no higher thought. And there's just simply these, ego. So I think I think the higher frequencies, higher frequencies, whether through sound, through, connecting with authentic, truth, spiritual level, and really being able to remove things, from your mind, from your life, change yourself, become a positive force in the world. It may not be pleasant. You may have to sacrifice things you want to do, but so in a sense you do what thou wilt, but you're not just doing that on the egoic level. And I think that's maybe will stop this wonderful new world, that Jerry was talking about back in the 90s. And his last thing here, MMTC equals massive machine type communications. 6G is going to bring together physical and cyber worlds and create paradigm shifting living styles in metaverse. EMBB is a continuous evolution of enhanced mobile broadband, EMBB, for human-centric communication use cases. It will enable extremely immersive experience and multi-sensory interactions in XR applications, including augmented reality, virtual reality, mixed reality, and telepresence. So there we have it. Isn't that what Jerry was talking about? That's right there.
Incredible.
It
goes way back. Goes back, and it's integrated in the music. Those deadheads really are deadheads. They just follow the people around. They're high. They listen to the music constantly, like they're addicted to it. Like I've seen deadheads that will listen to band tapes or whatever of theirs on loop just for hours. Incredible. Almost like they're self-hypnotizing themselves.
Well, and so Jerry is talking about the semiotic. He says semiotic soup. Does that sound like you love your fans? That's like a, semiotic. Again, semiotic that's an advanced, that's a cybernetics, that's a linguistics term. Semiosis is signs, meaning, interpretation of reality, how the inner map or modeling of reality can be manipulated, or how it shifts through, how we make sense of our world, right? That, so it's, so it includes every type of, not just words or whatever, but anyways, so this is a semiotic soup, right? This is our little primordial Play-Doh that we can sort of model what is now being promoted and taking place, which may indeed be technologically feasible, but I don't know if it is. But just read this real quick. Last thing. This is more about the 6G. It also applies to new applications enabled by the ubiquitous utilization of robots, right? So we will be policed by robots, right? So they already have this stuff. This is already showing up, right? At sports games, right? In China, right? Mm-hmm. The robot, man, if the AI picks you up, you're just who knows? You just bug splat, So UAVs, what unarmed, I think that's like flying the drone technology, and new human interfaces, HMIs. So new human machine interfaces in manufacturing, public service, autonomous driving, and household management. So what is a human machine interface? What does that mean? You plug your brain into into your car when you drive? I mean, what does that mean? Or is the human being interfaced into the machine? Are we being phased out as human beings, right? Are we going into the singularity? Right? Are we going into the singularity? And it says, here we go. Precise location and deterministic communication will be provided to support real-time interaction between collaborative robots. Guess who the collaborative robot is? That may be you once you connect with your human machine interface, right? So some of this language is not being stated explicitly, but if you see this, new applications enabled, HMIs, human machine interface. So, what's a collaborative robot? You have physical robots. You also have human beings that are also being interfaced or phased into this zone. And here we see the absolute description of it. 6G will integrate sensing with communication. Remember, Jerry brought up communication, right? Communication is central to the cybernetic systems theory. It is the basis of the whole system is communication, ones and zeros, cybernetics, the machine, the command and control grid, the encoding of information, everything as a type of information. You ever seen the movie The Prisoner? I'm not Prisoner, the TV show.
I haven't watched it in a long time. I need to watch it again. Yeah.
Information, please.
But right, it's like that, right? Isn't that basically like the totally controlled 6G environment where a guy's living in an artificial environment?
Yeah, and you can't distinguish. And you go into these, you'll go into. He says controlling input and output. This is Jerry, not Herbert Brun from Rocket Scientist, but input and output. You can have delusional. You could go into like in The Prisoner, right? You go into, you think you're escaping, and you go back, and everything is fake, and you've been drugged, or you're this or you're that, right? That's the reality of that. But sensing with communication in a single system, again, what you see and how you communicate it, what goes in, what comes out, is going to be integrated. So exploiting radio waves to see the physical world. So completely bathed in immersive radio waves, meaning, this super dense, high level, frequencies, right? That are operating even on the same bandwidth as a human brain, to see the physical world and make digital twins in the cyber world. Okay.
It's incredible. Yeah.
So and again, just to go back to Jerry, is that not what he's talking about? Absolutely. Right. Who cares? Just that I spent my life learning how to play guitar. What he's talking about, going into this virtual reality, going into the 6G, going into they mentioned the metaverse, right? But the metaverse, there's little rollouts, right, of this. You have the quote unquote metaverse. There is, about this virtual, they have supposedly, right, this entire mapping of the whole physical world, at least the United States, right, in this real-time computing system. You heard about that?
No.
I suppose it's a Pentagon DARPA project where they already have at least basic versions of an entire mapping of every single human being and every interaction in this virtual environment. And the fact is that you can also influence and manipulate people very easily from that, right? Anyways, so that's
wild. Somebody mentioned here earlier about the whole meta meeting between Zuckerberg and that other guy. What's his name? I forgot. It's
Elon Musk.
No, it's an interviewer guy. Somebody in the chat will know his name. It was Zuckerberg and somebody tell me. Anyway, let's see. But yeah, they had a meeting inside the Meta or whatever. Something else. Let me go back through my notes. Yeah, but yeah, so this stuff is already kind of happening. Like imagine like somebody knowing where you are, where your other digital twin is online or something. That's just off the charts. Well, I know Bob is because where he's online. Yeah, it was Lex Friedman is the guy's name.
Well, look at this. Precise localization and deterministic communication. What's deterministic communication? It means that you will get a command in your brain and you will have to do that. That's deterministic. That's a way of saying total control. Even control communication can also control, you have a wrong thought. Let's speed up your blood pressure. Let's make you have a heart attack. Right. Let's make you go into a delusional psychosis. Let's command you to go do a school shooting. Like, this, but deterministic is not, that's top down. That's total control, right? You're determining outcomes. You're determining reality. And that's fundamentally what it is a total control of the human being and the external world and the physical and the biological, and technically to harvest, you could say, the spiritual or the soul of man. So it really is sort of a pretty unpleasant outcome, at least for me. I don't know.
No, I think it's basically like a slow moving nightmare, because it will just take away all personal autonomy. You know, it's really God-given autonomy. The fact that you can kind of make the choice to do what you want, or just make decisions on the daily. So I think this is like a nightmare. This is a nightmare techno world. Like it's a dystopia on meth and steroids. It's a disaster. It's a human disaster.
Oh, absolutely. And just the will, right? So we have a lot of these words like character, right? Character used to mean someone who had developed, right, very strong values, right? And now it's, he's like a joker or a character in a sitcom.
Right. A buffoon or whatever, because it's gone. It didn't develop anything. There's no need to develop in this world, right?
Well, do what thou wilt, but what is your will? Do you, if you are, is a heroin addict, is a sex addict, is somebody with, extreme interpersonal rage, are they able to act from their will, or are they in a sense operating mechanically based on their addictions, based on their own egoic negative level stuff, right? How can you, if you're, that's one of the things, if you look like to develop that, say, love, agape, right? Developing love for others. It doesn't necessarily mean that you lie down and cut your own throat, but it means that you move beyond that very binary, almost animalistic level where you're never getting into these higher elements or regions of the human mind, right? It's not saying that people can't, do great things and still have these tendencies, but how do you know what your will is, right? If you're ruled by your passions, if you're a slave to anything, what's your true will? Who imposed that on you, right?
Right.
I mean,
what's your real character? What's your real self? Like, that's really like how dangerous this is like an abnegation, a kind of bleaching of like human experience. Like it's gone. Like just like the fact that you get up and get up in the morning and decide what to do that day is over. Like that's like maybe worse than just actual enslavement. It's a form of enslavement. I don't think there's any other choice in my mind about all this stuff. It's techno enslavement, right?
It's techno enslavement. And the thing is that, we have every day, right? We have the opportunity to do something different than we did yesterday. We can make different choices. We can try. We can engage differently. We can, or not, right? It's a process. But what we have is the present moment. What's real is your actions, right, in the moment. That is really what is real. And the whole point of, say, like the trivium, quadrivium, or religion, church, or whatever, is to develop that higher level of will where you're not going to just eat the whole, bag of candy. You're going to eat one piece of candy, or you're not just going to go ahead and smash the neighbor's window and steal his Nintendo because you want it, or you're not just going to go kill people on the road because you think it's fun. You're an animal. You're not a human being. You have not risen to the level of a human being with an authentic will. Now, does someone like Crowley or these higher level control people like Jerry Garcia, do they have a will? Yeah. And they're using their will very consciously to direct the fate. I'm not saying, Jerry was doing that, but he's obviously connected. And this thinking went back a long time ago, which is what I think I've demonstrated. But they're using their wills. They're using their wills to control you. Right. And you think you're doing what you will because you can go out and twerk, or, you know what I'm saying? Whether it's, if you don't have anything beyond that, you can never develop this. If you don't have any discipline, you're not going to do anything. And if you think that your egoic lower level passions are real, you're never going to get to as you said, it becomes a graying out of experience, and you're not even going to have that choice anymore.
Right.
But it's the do what thou wilt that's like the Willy Wonka chocolate factory, right? It's the theater for madmen only that Herman Hesse talked about, where they had that out in Las Vegas, with the original, LSD rollout, right? The theater for madmen only. You get the ticket once you get in Hotel California, you can never leave, right? but you give that up. You know, so I think there is that level of some kind of, otherwise I think we'd already be in this world right now if there wasn't, because you know, but I think, sorry, you had, I don't mean to keep ranting here, but you had a great assessment. It takes away, I mean, even the prisoner in jail is better off than this world.
I think so. They at least have some kind of thing where they can decide something. I'm not going to eat this bologna sandwich, or I'm going to eat it, or whatever. I'm going to go talk to Bob, or talk to, you know, Lamar. I don't know who's in jail, but like they can go do that. But I think in this environment, you don't have it. And imagine the long-term consequences of this type of techno culture. Like then you're deciding who's going to live or die, what kind of beings. These beings aren't even real people anyway, so they're not as valuable. There's all kinds of like derision or caste imposition, like, oh, you've been on a freaking Neuralink for 5 years. Like, what about the people? Then you have dividing of humanity among another way to divide people, not on color, class, wealth, but like what's your view to, and that's actually kind of playing out today in maybe not a starkly obvious way. But a lot of people who are online playing video games or streaming all the time, they're totally different than non-computer people. Like it's so imagine that, you know, cubed or something like that, where somebody's receiving stuff and going out like Elon Musk's Neuralink. Like it's terrifying.
Well, yeah, and I'll just close with just another reference to Jerry. Hopefully I won't think about Jerry again. Let's see it. The Jerry's ghost will come. I'll be attacked by an army of Jerry's in my sleep, playing Sugar Magnolia over and over again.
Right.
That'll be rough. But he says communication, everything humanity has developed, we don't really need it anymore now. You don't even need your brain. Again, there's different levels of initiation, but for the masses, or even for the technocrats, right? All these things humanity developed, it isn't really necessary. You don't need to learn how to play guitar. You don't need to develop your character. You don't need to travel to Europe. Right. You can just go in the virtual world, but all of these things that develop, which are parts of our biology, parts of our brains, right? Parts of our shared ancestry, parts of our heritage, just going to be erased, right?
Race, right?
Atrophy, losing the ability, maybe even losing the ability even to think at all. Yeah. You know, to a point where, you know, you really are, you know, what if you take that Neuralink out? What if you can't think anymore? What if you're just like what happens?
What if you're a meta for too long? You know, like that's the horror show. Like Zuckerberg does not have your best interest at heart. Like if you're a meta too far, like, what happened to your regular normal life? The normal life, like appointed to all human beings, you know, to be young, middle-aged, get married, procreate, get old, gather wealth. Like it's incredible. Like that's why I'll never get any device. I'll never join some kind of alternate world. I think that's like, it should be prohibited by all religions, really, because you're not living out the life God gave you. So I think that it's very sinister to me. And you're giving control over to human turds. Like Mark Zuckerberg is a monster. One of the reasons that we have this current political predicament is because of him. Like he was placing money to subvert the proper, collection of our ballots. So like this guy's a total monster. I don't know why anybody would spend money on Meta or Facebook for that matter, but that's a whole other story. Yeah. Anyway, how do you like to finish this up? We're literally made it to almost 2 hours, Hans. Another great talk, excellent talk, great information. They can find you at your website, Hans.
Yep, hansutter.com, mindcontrolmusic.wordpress.com. Just shoot me an email or whatever. And there should be these web designers. I've got some music that's available, and check out that. I'm going to start putting out more music. I've been basically doing production for other people, and now I'm going to do my own stuff. All right. So yeah, check me out there. And, and I am working now. I am focusing also on ways to either block or even sort of flip some of these processes and energies, and and to get through this, right? Because this is happening, right? We're not making this up. We're not watching Demon Hunter movie from 1977. We're almost living in it. And you don't look at the whole not to offend anybody here, but look at the whole transgender movement. Look at this, what a rapid shift of the entire education system. Look at how, and look what they're doing. So this is the exact same model. This is almost your entry point. That's what Jerry was saying, right? Whatever you think you are is real. You just make up your own subjective reality. Well, if I get my Johnson hacked off, just because I think I'm a woman, after a while, I may regret that. I did something in the physical world. So just because I think I'm that, it's not possible, right? So you're going against nature. You're going against God. You're going against, even if you have, a relatively miserable life or your life is boring, you still have choice and you can make it and there's so many other levels you can find to your experience. You don't have to be on, lifestyles of the, rich and famous, or hanging out with, Maria Abramovich and Zelensky, at a spirit cooking ceremony. You don't have to be up there. You can, so it's taking your own life as it is, the reality, and really accepting that. And then, because there's something there that's intangible, but what's real. Right. You know what I mean? Okay. But
it's something about authenticity and integrity to the past and present too, because you're kind of alive. You're like denying your ancestors if you kind of go into the metaverse or something, because they suffered and struggled to get all of us to this point, whatever it is, and like going and denying your kind of biological personal heritage by going into the metaverse or Neuralink is like giving all that away, because you're never gonna feel like what it is to be a human, to suffer like that. And even boredom or not being popular, those are all things that help you ameliorate those problems, right? Like, oh man, I'm bored or have a boring life. So over time you're like, well, let's do something exciting. I'm gonna go, become a backwoodsman or something. So those things are part of the process. Those processes are all taken away by these computer metaverses or alternative universes. They're really a social disaster, and people should be terrified of them, in my opinion. So that's the way I'll know.
And just one last thing, it's not only your audio visual input, stimulus, metaverse, but your biology, your DNA. They want to control your organs, right? Your glandular system, your brain functioning. The mRNA. What is the mRNA technology? That's what that is. I mean, they want to be able to upgrade and upload and change. They think they can do it better than the natural order of the universe. Right. I mean, it's such a level. I mean, it's pure pride.
It's mad scientist level, right? It's just total arrogance, like Fauci level arrogance and evil. Like, oh, we know better. I'm the science. And you don't get choice. And that's always the sign of tyranny, is the taking away of individual choice just for people to make mistakes, really, or just to actually think on their own. I mean, it's incredible. So anyway, Hans, great to talk with you again. We're at the 2-hour mark. So that is Music for the Masses. Music is the Weapon. Number 8. So we've done 8 shows so far. So they've all been superb. Yeah.
I've been trying to get to these last few slides. Finally did it. Yeah.
We made it. We're done. We got to the last one. It's incredible. But, we've added a lot of other information other than the slides and things like that. So anyway, thanks so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, William. It was a real pleasure. Yeah, and thanks to everybody for listening and for your feedback. And I absolutely appreciate the attentive audience. So
they're totally interested. All right. So